Hello and welcome everybody to the first ever intro. I hope you guys liked it. We'll have to see if it continues or not. We'll see what happens, who knows, but I hope you guys definitely enjoyed that one. We are going to get into some exciting notes and exactly what that's going to look like. So without further ado, let's bring those notes to you in 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, we are back here and we are going to continue on with our wonderful PowerPoint lesson. And in this one, we're going to be moving, we just finished up with soil salinization. So we're going to be moving on from pesticides, slide number 25, all the way through to slide number 36 on pollinators. And that is where we will stop for the day. All right, everybody. So without further ado, let's begin PHS Science with fabs. All right, guys, so the first thing we're looking at here is pesticides. And what exactly are pesticides? Well, they are chemicals or a biological means or a physical means, anything that is stopping an organism from doing something that you don't want it to do in the generalist sense. So many farmers rely on pesticides to produce their crops. A pesticide is a poison used to destroy pests, such as insects, rodents, or weeds. Examples would be insecticides, rodicides, herbicides, okay? All of these things target insecticides, target insects, rodicides, target rodents, herbicides, target weeds. They all specifically target a certain type of organism. Pesticides, however, can also harm beneficial plants and animals. So we've talked maybe a little bit in the past, we'll talk about it a little bit now, but the difference between a broad spectrum and a narrow spectrum. A broad spectrum pesticide is something that targets everything. It's broad, right? A narrow range pesticide targets something very specific, okay? So when possible, you always want to err on the side of caution and do a narrow range pesticide because it targets your pest very specifically. Broad ones just take out everything, okay? Yeah. I will link this pesticide video up for you at the end, and you guys can watch it then. So pest control. Worldwide, pests destroy about 1/3 of the world's potential food harvest. A pest is any organism that occurs where it is not wanted. So think about that, right? A pest, using a pesticide, that occurs anywhere you don't want that pest to be. That's when you would use it. And it occurs in large enough numbers to cause economic damages. So in some cases, these large fields with all of their crop, you may get pests, you may get some pests, some organisms that move through and essentially just attack the entire crop, believe it or not. Humans try to control populations of many types of pests, including plants, fungi, insects, and other microorganisms. Moving on, pesticide resistance. Now, the scary thing is that these pests can build up resistance. They can actually become resistant to the pesticide that you are using, okay? And they actually call them, get this, super pests. No, I did not make that up. That is the truth. They call them super pests. They've evolved biologically to not be harmed by those specific pesticides anymore. So over time, spraying large amounts of pesticides to get rid of pests usually make the pest problem worse. You're getting them accustomed to, you're making them used to seeing those pesticides, okay? It's like, I don't know, if you guys always get yelled at, right? You wake up, you get yelled at. Middle of the day, you get yelled at. Night, you get yelled at. You get yelled at. You get yelled at. Like if I, Mr. F, I'm always yelling at you. After a while, it's gonna kind of lose its effect a little bit, right? It doesn't matter anymore. It's like, oh, okay, here it is. Same kind of thing with pesticides. If they keep getting sprayed, eventually their body builds an immunity to it. They become immune to this pesticide. So pest populations, the second bullet point right here. Pest populations may evolve resistance to the ability and survive the exposure. And more than 500 species of insects have developed resistance since the 1940s. Imagine that. Over 500 species have built up a resistance to the pesticides that we use to try and get rid of them. so they're no longer effective. Human health concerns. Now, how are humans affected by pesticides? You may be thinking, well, hey, Mr. F, they're spraying them on these plants. They're spraying them to get rid of insects. We're not an insect. Come on, why does it matter for us? Well, think about this. Pesticides are designed to kill organisms. We are an organism. So in some cases, in high enough dosages, these pesticides may be dangerous to humans. Pesticides work in a couple of different ways. Sometimes they make the insect unable to reproduce. They make it infertile. They may mess with the nervous system of an insect. Okay, they may just flat out kill it. If it's doing that to the insect, it could quite possibly do that to humans. Cancer rates among children in areas where large amounts of pesticides are used on crops are sometimes higher than the national average. People who apply pesticides need to follow safety guidelines. It's very important that they protect themselves from contact with these chemicals. Think about if you're like a crop duster, right? You're flying these planes over and you're dropping the pesticide. You're constantly touching that every day. You need to take the precautions necessary to make sure that you're not harmed by it. Excuse me. Okay, guys, so I want you to understand pesticides can be dangerous to humans as well. So pollution and persistence. And what does this mean? Well, it means that pesticides are considered a type of pollution and they can persist in nature. So that means they will last. They will last when they are sprayed. It's like they always tell you if you're fertilizing a plant like with Miracle-Gro, you don't want to over fertilize because it stays in there. It lasts. The same thing with pesticides, guys. If you're spraying with pesticides, it's going to last. You don't want to over apply because it will stay there and stay there and stay there. So the problem with pesticides harming people and other organisms is especially serious with pesticides that are persistent. A pesticide is persistent, meaning it lasts, if it does not break down easily or quickly in the environment. Persistent pesticides do not break down into harmless chemicals, okay, and they can accumulate in water and soil. Some pesticides have been banned in the United States because they're still, and even though they were banned, they are still detected in the environment. So let's go back to this one right here, quick, the third bullet. Can you imagine that the more you spray, if these pesticides aren't breaking down, they're just accumulating and building up in that soil and staying there and increasing in concentration, and they're not going away. So something to think about. It's not only pollution to those little pests, it's pollution to you and I. All right, so now there's this thing called biological pest control. And what that is it uses certain organisms to eliminate or control pests. So every pest has an enemy, right? Think of it like the predator, right? Every prey out there has a predator. These enemies can sometimes be used to control the pest population. So we're not really using, in this case, like spraying pesticides. Okay, so these biological pest control can include pathogens, plant defenses, chemicals from plants, disruption of insect breeding, other organisms that would attack the pests, the insects. So there's a couple different ways. We don't just need to spray fertilizer. We can control pests in other ways maybe that are less harmful. Okay, maybe we could just use like the plant will defend itself. It has like thorns or spikes, or it emits like a certain type of natural like poison that stops pests from eating it, or it has a bitter taste. These are all things that can control pests. So I don't want you to just think we're always spraying. There are other ways to control them, along with this thing called integrated pest management, or IPM. Integrated pest management is a modern method of controlling pests. And the goal of IPM, or integrated pest management, is not to eliminate pest populations, but to reduce the damage caused by them. So a pest is really an organism that makes economic damage. So if it's not making economic damage, right? If it's not eating your crops, is it still a pest? No. So if you cannot necessarily kill the pest, but stop it from creating that economic damage, then you're essentially reaching the goal. So such programs to do this include biological pest control, chemical pest control, mixing these different methods, maybe going in and actually picking off the pests, introducing a predator to the pests pest, so it attacks the pest and not the crop. So all these different ways to control them. This is just an example of integrated pest management. We want to control the pests, identify and monitor them. Is it causing economic damage? We want to control the pests and the crops. So, integrated pest management. We just have a couple more to go, guys. 3 more slides. Oh, excuse me, 4 more slides, and that is it. Integrated pest management. We're looking at biological pest methods. Biological methods are the first methods used to control the pest. So natural predators, pathogens, parasites of the pest are introduced. Cultivation controls, literally, they go in and they will vacuum insects off the plants. It's pretty wild. It really is. And as a last result, we're looking at those chemical pesticides, the insecticides, okay, the rodicides, the herbicides, because this is where the pest can evolve and become immune to it. So we want to use this as a last result. All right, soil pollution. Remember, this stuff builds up in the soil. Toxic pesticides can remain in soil for a long, long time. And it filters into your groundwater, and it can actually get into your drinking water, your wells, okay? Pollute your lakes, rivers, ponds, and streams. So pest and weed control, we talked about the chemical pesticides. They're cheap, they're effective, but they lead to resistance and they build up. We talked about the biological pest control. It's a permanent solution, but it can harm non-target organisms, meaning it's like that broad spectrum, right? It can harm organisms that we're not really going after, as a result. And then last, the integrated, this is the best one. This is what we want to use first. Increasing popular solution, combines chemical and biological pest control. We want to do everything we can to kind of control it without introducing chemicals. That's our last result. Because when we introduce chemicals, we not only hurt pests, but we can also hurt other organisms like pollinators. And those pollinators are very, very, very important. Because like bees, that is what gives us our flowers, and it's what actually sets fruit. Fruit can actually be pollinated, or fruit is pollinated, and that's what allows the fruit to grow. Pollination is the process by which plants reproduce sexually. Agriculture relies on pollinators such as insects, bees, birds, many different organisms, anything that goes from flower to flower or plant to plant. And native and domesticated pollinator populations have declined due to the use of pesticides. So when you spray something, remember, sometimes you're not only killing the target pest, which you want to kill, but you're killing these other organisms, okay, these pollinators. So I'm going to link this video up at the end as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like the intro. Hope you guys are going to enjoy this video and that video. Have a great day, everybody. I will see you all in the next video. Take care. Mr. F, out of here.